Hey y'all, movie retrospective time. Going back to our 80s childhoods.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't quite a child when this came out.
Yeah, you were a little bit older than me. I think I was 13 when this came out, so I was about the same age as the Goonies characters, like the younger ones.
Yeah.
So I think this hit me at like exactly the right time. I might have seen this in the theater. I'm pretty sure that I did.
What year was this again?
85.
Yeah,
85.
see, I was 16, 17
Yeah,
years
you were
old.
older, so you were kind of more...
I was outside the age range of this.
Well, it's interesting because this is one thing that's always... And we've talked about this on the show before, particularly ones when we talk about movies from the 80s that are very, like, have a lot of nostalgia value for us.
Yeah.
And I'm always kind of wondering, yes, I know, like, old farts like us... like love these movies because we grew up with them and we saw them like during very formative years of our lives, but I'm like, I always wonder how kids of today like would react to them.
Yeah.
So I found this video today, and I think he just put it up like a few months ago or last year or something. And every now and then when he does family movies, he watches them with his kids. Like he did one with his kids with Jaws and stuff like that, and it's like really cool. So he likes to see, because he kind of felt the same way. He was just kind of like, look, do I just love this movie because I grew up with it? Or, do kids nowadays, would they react to it the same way? So he did a show on the Goonies, and he has a daughter who's 10 and a son who was like 7 or 8. They fucking loved it.
Okay.
They loved it. They just thought it was super fun, and they loved all the characters, and they even like thought it was like really tense and like really scary at times and shit like that, which is exactly the way kids in the 80s saw it, I think.
Well, it's a real well-made movie.
I mean...
I never saw this in the theater. I saw it on TV. It was on cable. And in those days, you're talking about CRT television. It's real low-res and fuzzy looking. It didn't look that great on television. I remember just kind of going, yeah, whatever. I really didn't pay a whole lot of close attention to it. I mean, shit, I was probably 16 or 17. I was getting late. I didn't give a shit about that then. Come on. I was more into like shit like Blade Runner and...
Well, like I said, you were older when this came out, so this was like a little bit... Like I said, I was about the same age as the protagonist.
But I remember appreciating certain things about it. I remember appreciating that the special effects were good. And I remember saying, well, it's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I remember thinking that. And kind of like a pirate movie. That's what I remembered about it. But I didn't really... I remembered that Cyndi Lauper was in it, At the time, I saw her as an older woman. I see her now, and it's like she's like a kid.
She was the kid in the 80s.
That's what it seemed
I mean,
like,
this was just like a year after she got really huge. With like Girls Just Want to Have Fun. She was the music supervisor on this, so she actually she did a couple songs, obviously, for the movie, and then she like picked all the other stuff that
There's a music. I remember the music video associated with this movie. I remember that playing constantly.
Yeah, that was on MTV all the time.
I think I liked the music video or knew the music video more than the movie.
But that was the music video. That was the one with all the wrestlers in it, right? Well, she always put wrestlers in her videos. But this one, I kind of feel like, I don't remember if it was this song, which is the main song, which is like The Goonies Are Good Enough, or 8 Arms to Hold You, which was actually supposed to be in the movie, but that scene was cut out. And it was actually, I had the single, and that was the B-side. But, so I don't remember if it was that, but that video was batshit insane. Even by 80s standards. Go watch it. It's on YouTube. It's super fun.
The young Tom liked her music, but I wasn't really attracted to her. You look at her now, she's a lot cuter than I remembered her.
She was adorable.
Yeah,
honestly, I kind of feel like back in the 80s, there was like a whole little bit of a rivalry between Cyndi Lauper and Madonna.
Yeah.
Like, if you were cooler, you liked Cyndi Lauper. You know what I mean? Because she was like a little more funky.
I thought Madonna
and, like,
was hotter.
Punk rock. Well, I think a lot of people's like Madonna was like maybe sexier.
Yeah.
But I thought Cyndi Lauper was a lot cooler. I didn't actually think Madonna was all that cool. Like, Madonna was kind of cool, like, in her early days. Like when she was still like when she still had that like real distinctive look. But as she kind of got older and got more into like the sex pot thing, it's like she wasn't as cool anymore.
Although fucking Madonna didn't have shit on Dale Bozio from Missing Persons. She was smoking hot. Now, I remember her even fucking back in... I mean, she remained smoking hot all the way to the fucking late 80s. That's just my memory of that shit. She was a penthouse pet, so she was smoking hot.
Yeah.
She could sing though, too.
Yeah, there you had it. I mean, I'm not going to say Madonna couldn't sing, because Madonna
can sing well.
But I mean, Cyndi Lauper could sing too. And honestly, like, Cyndi Lauper had a very, very long career. She's still around now, like, performing and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you probably remember the video because, like I said, that video was everywhere. I had the 45, the single.
Yeah.
For all you kids out there, 45, it's actual vinyl. You know what I mean? It's like a little record. Yeah. I had one of those of the single, and it had the other Octopus song on the other side, which, like I said, that was cut out. So the reason I think that this movie is still so beloved to this day, do you know that Astoria, Oregon, where they shot this, every year they have Goonies Day? And it's in June because that's when the movie came out in 1985. And they have like a big, huge thing. Like some of the people from the cast and crew will come there. They have like big like Goonies games and like all kind of shit. It's a whole thing. And this has like a massive, massive cult following still to this day. So probably the reason why, and like I said, the 80s, this period in the 80s, 84, 85, some of the best fucking movies ever like came out those couple of years. This was actually from a story by Steven Spielberg. He didn't write the screenplay, but he came up with the original concept. And the screenplay was written by Chris Columbus, who had also written Gremlins, obviously, the criminally underrated Young Sherlock Holmes, which we should really get around to reviewing one day, because I fucking love that movie, and I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it. He also directed Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, first 2 Harry Potter movies, Christmas Chronicles 2, just fuck tons of stuff. And it was directed by, of course, the great Richard Donner, The Omen, Superman, Lethal Weapon, you know, just so the you know, talent that you had like behind the camera, you know, immediately you knew that was going to be a success. But I think what actually made this movie so memorable was all the kid actors. They had, I mean, that ensemble cast was just so fucking good. And pretty much every single one of those kids went on to much greater things like when they grew up.
The acting and the dialogue is good. It sounds naturalistic.
Yeah.
It is funny for the kid audience. It's for an adult, it's a little bit tiresome. In some ways the humor is juvenile, but that's the target market.
Yeah.
That's what they're targeting. I could put myself in the shoes of a fucking 10 or 11-year-old and I'd be like, yeah, that would have been funny. I would have thought that was funny back then.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is essentially like an Indiana Jones movie, but aimed toward a slightly younger audience. I mean,
10, 11, 12.
This was a PG, which actually is crazy because there's a lot of swearing in this. Yeah. Like, the kids are just like shit all the fucking day long.
It would have been edgy for a kid's film. You would be dealing with a kid's film that wasn't talking down to you. That's how. And there was
criminals that like murdered people and shit like that, and some of the kids like almost died, and you know there were a couple real dark jokes in there. Which
that's how I felt about Star Wars when I was a kid. That felt like I was watching an adult movie back in '77. It wasn't talking down to me, but I liked it. You know, fucking robots and shit blowing up.
I mean, I do kind of feel like this was more aimed toward a younger audience, whereas Star Wars I think was just aimed toward like everybody.
General.
This was aimed more toward kids, but like you said, was quite edgy for a kids movie.
Yeah, you felt like you were getting away with something watching it. That's what they intended.
Because all the characters were quite young. You know what I mean? Probably
swearing.
Like I said, like 12 or 13.
They're swearing. They're actually being realistic kids.
That's what I liked about them. I think like the ensemble. You know, Richard Donner has said, you know, it was kind of a nightmare, like he wanted to kill himself every day because it was such a nightmare. Like, working with kid actors is always going to be, and this many. Because he was like, they're rowdy, and they were always, like, playing pranks on him and shit like that. But, I mean, he said when he got them all together, there was just instant, like, chemistry. And the first part of this movie where they're like setting up all the friendships and they're setting up like, you know, how the quest is gonna like the, you know, getting ready to go on the quest and everything, they all kind of like talk over each other and it's very chaotic, but it seems that to me, that the whole entire shit seems like ad-libbed. It doesn't seem like anybody wrote that down because everybody's just kind of talking. These people are talking back here. These people are talking up here. It just seems like very, very organic, like the whole like relationships that they have with each other.
Yeah, and of course, you know, kids are going to be at that age group's comforted by that because that's the way it is when you've been in a crowd of them. I remember it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think that's why a lot of people related to it so much because they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what a bunch of kids that age would sound like and talk like especially during that era. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, this movie obviously did really, really well when it came out. It came out summer of 1985. It only cost $19 million to make, but made $125 million. So let's talk about some of the kids that are in it because pretty much all of them went on to massive superstardom, which, like I said, is not really surprising considering, like, how good they all were in this. So obviously you have Mikey, he's like the main Goonie, and that's Sean Astin. Obviously probably best known nowadays as being Samwise Gamgee in the Lord of the Rings movies. He was also in Stranger Things. I loved him in that. Was the voice of Raphael on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the animated one from the mid-2000s or late 2000s. He was in a zillion other things as well. Then you have probably the one that did the most, was the most successful as far as like, tentpole movies and shit like that. That'd be Josh Brolin. Now he plays the older brother, Brand. This was actually his first movie role. He probably, I don't know how old he was when he was in this. Because this is James Brolin, Brolin from Amityville Horror. That's his son, right?
Yeah.
So this was Josh Brolin's first movie. He looks about 18 or 19. I think he's playing a high school student.
Yeah.
And he looks about that age. So this was his first movie, and then he's great in this. I had forgotten how fucking funny he was.
He's like your older brother.
That's exactly.
He's working out, he's getting girls, or just starting to get girls. They kind of show some of that, and he's buffed out for his age, for somebody who's not fucking on gear, which some guys at that age were on gear. But so he's kind of like he's been placed in the movie to be everybody's surrogate older brother. He's the older brother for the viewer.
Honestly, I love the brother relationship between him and Mikey. It just seemed very naturalistic.
Yeah.
Like he's constantly picking on him.
Yeah.
And calling him a dummy and shit like that. But then, there's a great scene where, he's constantly like calling him names and shit like that. But then when he says something, like when Mikey is all sad about something, he comes out and he just like hugs him. You know what I mean? So there is like a lot of love there, even though they're picking on each other all the time.
He's also the surrogate older brother for the viewer.
Yeah.
All right, a lot of kids don't have older brothers. So through this movie, you have the experience of what it's like to have an older brother. That's what they're talking about. That's how I read it.
I had younger brothers. I did not have older brothers.
That's how I read the situation. I don't have any brothers or sisters, so I have no idea what it's like.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I was too young when I watched this movie to really get that angle of it. I didn't care. I didn't really, too young to pick up on what they were trying to do, and I was too old to be the target of the movie. So, but as an adult, I'm watching. I see what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, all the characters in this are great, but I think when I first watched it, I was younger. So I think I can relate to Josh Brolin's character more now that I'm older. Like, I appreciate his character more. Like, he has a lot of funny shit going on in there, too. You know what I mean? Kind of in the background. But yeah, so this was his first movie. Obviously, he was in Mimic. He was in Grindhouse. He was in the awesome No Country for Old Men. He was in W. He played George W. Bush. Yeah. He was in Milk, which is also a great film. Sicario, Deadpool 2.
Sicario was great.
And he also played, probably most famously, Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Very, very.
That was him.
Yep, that's him.
He's huge in that. That's mostly CG.
That's mostly CG. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great. He's fucking great.
Huge.
I mean, I loved him. I love No Country for Old Men. I can't believe. I don't think we've even reviewed that on the show. Have we? Holy shit, we need to do that. I love that fucking movie.
I barely remembered. I remember liking it.
Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. So then you have probably most people's favorite character, Chunk. That's played by Jeff Cohen. Now, interestingly, Jeff Cohen. He was in like a few movies and TV like before and after this, but not a lot. He seemed like not all that interested in acting, and he actually was more interested in kind of like the legal side. So he actually went to law school and became an entertainment lawyer in Hollywood and was actually quite successful. It's kind of a shame too. And I was watching this other video that said, man, he probably would have made a killing as a comedian, because even as a kid, they showed like some clips of him like on some interview shows. He was on Wogan, that British interview show, and the guy Terry Wogan was like trying to pick on him a little bit, or trying to like provoke him a little bit with the questions, talking about his weight and all this other stuff. And that kid just like danced fucking circles around him. Like, he was just quick, and he was just like very, very quick-witted, very funny. And it's just like, what a funny fucking kid. And it's just, he really gets like all the best comedic shit in the movie. I mean, just his comic timing in this is just fucking impeccable. So I think that that's probably why a lot of people remember him. Like, he's the best character. Like, the shit with the ice cream and all. I mean, just like so fucking funny. Then of course you have the legendary Corey Feldman as Mouth. I mean, fucking Corey Feldman, man. He was, honestly, I think he was one of the best child actors of all time. I mean, he was in Stand By Me. He was fantastic in that. He was in so many, he was in Lost Boys. He was a little bit older then. But everything that he was in as a kid, he's fucking great. I mean, you could tell that, because, I'm not a big fan of child actors, usually. Usually they're annoying.
Usually there's a sell-by date.
Yeah, but
only good for a couple roles and get the fuck out of here. And then you see the dude, he's worthless. Overweight fucking druggie.
Yeah, but
well,
I mean,
you're putting too much fame and too much money on a young kid. They just can't.
It's a lot of pressure.
They just can't develop properly.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not
LA scene.
And it's not a normal life. You know what I mean? So it's gonna cause problems.
Yeah, and then there's fucking predation and weird shit happening over there, man. Fucking,
which did happen to Corey Feldman.
Yeah,
but
they want to deny it, but there it is. That's grooming.
But I mean, he was great in this, and he plays. It's good because he plays like a character that could very well have been like super obnoxious, because he is kind of like a troll. I mean, he does like the whole thing that he does like at the beginning when Mikey and Brand's mom comes home and said, "Oh, we're moving, and I hired this lady to like help us move, and she doesn't speak any English." And then Mouth says, "Oh, I speak Spanish, I'll translate." And then he starts telling her like all this fucked up shit.
Yeah.
Like, don't go in the attic, that's where Dad's sex dungeon is, and like all this, always separate your drugs. Like this is the heroin goes in here, and shit like that. And it's just, but he plays it off so well that he's still like really likable, even though he's being like a complete obnoxious asshole. So then obviously you have Jonathan Ke Huy Quan, who played Data. This is a very similar role to what he played in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He was Short Round, obviously. This one, he's kind of like the gadget kid.
Whatever happened to that guy?
He was in a bunch of stuff. He was in a bunch of more movies later. He was in like Encino Man and stuff like that. He did a shit ton of TV.
Okay.
He was on Head of the Class, shit like that. He's still in TV. I think he still does TV nowadays, so he's still around.
All right.
And then you have kind of like the older kid, like the older girls who kind of like tag along. Then you have Kerri Green as Andy. She was in some stuff. She was in a movie called Lucas, if you guys remember that one. I feel like Winona Ryder was in that or somebody. She was also in a movie with John Candy called Summer Rental, if anybody remembers that one. But then she kind of went more behind the camera. She went on and founded her own movie production company. And then you have Martha Plimpton as Steph. And she was in tons of stuff. She dated River Phoenix for a while, actually. I think they met when they were doing Running on Empty. But she was also in Mosquito Coast. She was in Parenthood. She was in a fuck ton of TV shows. Actually, probably best known as a Broadway actress. She does a lot of Broadway, a lot of stage. If you look at her Wikipedia page, it's like fucking movies, TV, there's like stage. She was in fucking tons of shit.
Yeah, River Phoenix, man. I forgot all about that guy.
Yeah, I remember when they dated, because she was kind of, her being in the Goonies, I mean, even though she's kind of like a minor role in this, this kind of like catapulted her to fame, so she was kind of in a lot of the teen magazines. I remember his brother
appeared in fucking, when he first showed up, Joaquin, you're thinking, well, what is this, the Booby Prize brother or something? What the hell's this?
The Booby Prize brother.
And all of a sudden, this motherfucker's fucking climbed to stardom, fucking.
And like getting Oscar nominations and shit.
And then he did that shit, that old Roman flick. What was that Roman flick that he did where he played the Emperor?
Yeah,
that was a really good role that he did. But he was in that cowboy flick. That one was pretty weird. Yeah. Pretty good. And then comes back as the Joker, fucking knocks it out of the park with one of the fucking best Batman universe movies that fucking made so far. We hadn't seen the new Batman. I've been hearing mixed stuff about it. I heard it's okay. Some people are saying no, it's terrible. Just
our friend Toby really liked it. He thought it was badass.
I'll make my own. I'll make my own judgment on it when I see it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just kind of pissed that it evidently is not in the same universe as the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. It should have been.
Well, what are you going to do? It's like, it's probably like different people working on it. Yeah. It's like, well, sometimes it's you want to make a movie and it's like, well, we don't want to have to worry about like all the rules that we established over there. We want to just kind of like do our own thing. Like, I get that.
That would have been really cool though.
Yeah, I know. But what are you going to do? Make your own movie.
Yeah.
And then you have obviously Sloth, the lovable, deformed man. Who was actually, I'd forgotten, but he was actually one of the Fratellis, who were the bad guys. He's their brother. He's like the deformed one. Now, he was actually played by a football player for the Oakland Raiders, John Matuszak. Now, he was in a bunch of other movies, too. Like, not a bunch, but he was in some. I think he was in North Dallas 40 and some other ones. He actually died in 1989, only 4 years after this movie came out. He was only 38 years old. He accidentally overdosed on painkillers, Darvocet, and he died. So, yeah, that's kind of a shame. But, yeah, I kind of feel like Sloth is one of the most memorable characters. You can still buy shirts nowadays that have fucking Sloth on it. So, you know. And then you have, obviously, the Fratellis, the bad guys, Anne Ramsey, Robert Davey, and Joe Pantoliano, who was great in Memento and many other things as well. So, yeah, okay, now I had forgotten. I remembered that there was like a criminal gang that were chasing the kids. But because you said you had forgotten when the movie opens, I had forgotten what a strange opening this movie has. There's no music or anything. It just says the title, The Goonies, and it kind of fades back into the black. And then it goes right to a prison, like a jail cell, and a cop like goes into the cell and there's a guy like hanging there. Yeah. And I was just like, oh yeah, I forgot that it opened like this. Yeah. I remembered like that their criminals were there and they busted out and everything, but I forgot that the movie opened on that. So I was like, well, that was pretty ballsy. Yeah. Like, because all of the marketing was all targeted toward kid stuff, and they're like, here you go, kids, here's a man hanging himself in a prison cell. And then he's not dead though, but like he kind of like cold cocks the cop, and then, you know, he escapes from jail. And then they pretty much like they don't set the jail on fire, but they just kind of like put fire around so the cops can't get out. And so then they take off. And then it goes to, you know, the kids and like their story. So I'm sure pretty much everybody knows the story of the Goonies, right? It's these kids, they live in this kind of working class neighborhood in Astoria, Oregon called the Goondocks. And the local country club has decided that they're going to expand, and so they're going to tear out their whole neighborhood and make a golf course. So they're going to foreclose on all their houses, so they all have to move, and they're all really bummed out about it because they like it there, and they don't all want to move away from each other. So they decide for one last weekend that they're going to have one last adventure, like all together. And because Brand failed his driving test and can't take them anywhere, they decide they're just going to poke around in the attic. While they're in the attic, they find a bunch of Mikey's dad's stuff, and Mikey's dad is like the museum curator in town, and they find a bunch of stuff like relating to the local legend, the pirate known as One-Eyed Willie, which
that's a dick.
It's a dick joke. I mean, obviously. And that's one of those jokes that like if you're maybe like 10 or 11 and you're watching the movie, like it'll just go shoo like right over your head, but if you're watching it when you're an adult, you're like, you mean a dick? Yeah. He's a dick pirate. Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly what he is. I mean, he does literally, because they find his skeleton later, but he does literally have one eye, but yeah, One-Eyed Willie. I mean, that's a dick joke. But yeah, so they find the map, they find some other shit, they find this article about this guy back in the 30s who went to look for it and it disappeared, and they're like, you know, this is around here, and Brand's like, you know, whatever, it's like, everybody's looked for that, it's like, it's not there, it's a legend, whatever, but they're like, come on, you know, this is the last weekend we're gonna be here, let's have this one adventure together. And then there's kind of like, there's kind of like a hint that they've done this kind of stuff before, which I kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, this is something they do every weekend. They go on some, like, little adventure, you know? So they decide they're going to go try to find this pirate treasure, and it leads them to this restaurant, which is closed for the season because it's autumn, and it turns out that the Fratellis, the escaped crime family, are using that as their hideout. So because the kids have to go in there to get down into the underground to find where One-Eyed Willie's treasure is, them and the crime family kind of like, you know, butt heads, as it were. And like I said, I like too that much like Home Alone, you know, which is Chris Columbus as well. You know, he directed it, and this is the same. He wrote the screenplay for this. I kind of feel like it has the bad guys in this have the same vibe as like the Wet Bandits, where it's kind of like they're menacing. I mean, obviously, because they killed a couple of feds. You know what I mean? Like you didn't see it, but there were gunshots, and then you find the body. They find the body later in the freezer with a bullet hole in his head. So they're murderers, and they're counterfeiters too. I didn't get that when I was a kid. They do find the machine later that they're printing the money on. So yeah, but they killed a couple FBI agents, so they're not like fucking around. And they actually at one point threatened to blend Chunk's hand, like they kind of like are sticking it in the blender, like they're gonna like chop his fingers off if he doesn't talk. And so they're menacing, but they're also like kind of bumbling. And I think they did like a good job of making them scary, but also making it believable that the kids could like outwit them at some point. You know what I mean? Because I think that's kind of like a hard that's kind of like a hard balance to strike, I suppose. You can't make it like too scary. And that's why I just thought it was funny that like that guy that was doing that video with his kids, that had watched the Goonies with his kids, and they thought it was a little bit, they didn't think it was like terrifying or anything, but they did think that parts of it were a little bit scary. You know what I mean? Because they're young, they're like 8 or whatever. So I could see that, because I mean that is like pretty scary to have like murderous criminals like running after you and threatening to like blend your hand and shit like that. But yeah, so it takes a while for the kids to actually get to the underground thing and like start and do all the booby traps and stuff. Like I said, at which point it gets very Indiana Jones, but it's like Indiana Jones for kids. But, you know, adults can watch it too. But, I mean, there's so many, like, great fucking sequences in this. My favorite one is, like, the bone piano. Like, the big skeleton with, like, the bone thing where she has to play the notes and then, like, makes the fucking floor drop out. You know, there's that whole water slide thing. And then when they get to the end and that big fucking pirate ship is there, they built that pirate ship from scratch. And it looks fantastic. You know what's sad is that after the movie wrapped, they were trying to sell or give the pirate ship to somebody. It's like, you know, anywhere, a museum, a collector, something like that. And nobody wanted it. And so they just like scrapped it. Can you, like, all that fucking work? And it's like, can you ever, like, nowadays, people would be like, holy crap, I wish that fucking shit was still around. They could have slapped it in a fucking museum or something. It's weird because when I was in St. Augustine last summer, they have a pirate and treasure museum there, and they actually have a little room where they have a bunch of memorabilia from movies that had pirates in them, and they did have some memorabilia from the Goonies, but I don't think it was anything. They just had like some old original posters and maybe like a couple of little props and stuff, but that's really sad to me. And also the original map from the movie, I think Sean Astin had it, and then like his mom threw it out or something, like thinking it was garbage. So again, that's like kind of sad. But yeah, so anyway, I just kind of feel like, so they made like a video game of this, they made board games of this. It was a big, huge thing. And I feel like they talked about doing a sequel, but I'm really glad they didn't.
Would have sucked.
It would have sucked. And honestly, everybody that I've watched, because I watched like a whole bunch of different like people's takes on this, and pretty much everybody that loved this movie was just like, I'm really glad they never did a sequel.
Would have sucked all the air right out of it.
Yeah, because it would have ruined the experience of the first one.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? And I just kind of feel like it didn't need a sequel. It was very self-contained, and you know, I don't know. It's and people were talking about making a sequel like recently, like with because most of the cast are still alive, and they're just like, oh, you know, they'd be the parents of the kids, and it's just kind of like, I don't even know if I want to see that either. Nope. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's. I don't think it'd be a good idea. Just let it be. It was of its time. It's of its place. It was just that one thing, and it was just like this awesome adventure, like this fun family movie. And it can't be replicated. Nobody needs to remake it. They don't need to do a sequel or nothing like that. It's
like E.T.
Yeah.
You don't fuck with it. You just let it be, you know?
Yeah, interestingly, it's kind of, E.T.'s never had a sequel.
Yeah, either. No, it's like
because it didn't need one.
No.
I mean, in this one...
They should have taken the guns out of it, too. Remember they took the guns out of E.T. and put the damn walkie-talkie? Stupid.
I mean, because the thing about it is that this...
I was a kid and saw that shit and fucking loved it. Nobody cared. They didn't even notice that there were any guns. So what?
Yeah.
Stupid.
I mean, the thing about it, though, is, like, even if you did a sequel to the Goonies, like, what would it even be? Like, because I think the Goonies, even though you could do other quote-unquote adventures...
Yeah.
I kind of feel like one of the best things about the Goonies is the whole pirate shit. I love pirate shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't do pirate shit again because the ship is gone. You know what I mean?
My take on the movie is that the movie was a masterpiece. It was designed to make money, and it did that. Okay?
Yeah, big time.
And it did it. It made money by getting kids to see it multiple times in the theater and to sell a bunch of merchandise. It did this by implanting itself firmly into the minds of these kids that saw it. and it did that by telling a good story and it had good tone. It was a mainstream America tentpole movie. It had that Spielbergian kind of fucking middle class vibe to it. You know what I mean? Where it's anywhere USA. If you're in America, even in another country, you felt like you were in this kind of an idealized American setting, and which was a good thing because it was kind of like something to aspire to, even if you weren't in it. And then it was like, let's say you were working class or lower class, you were kind of included in these movies too. It was just, you felt like you were in with these people. It's just a real good tone. What's the word? Optimistic. Very optimistic tone to the movie.
Yeah, it definitely does have that.
And so you're supposed to come out of the movies with this kind of tone, and Spielberg was real good at it. All right, you come out of the theater and it feels like you've reemerged back into the world with kind of like some more energy in your step. Like, just you had a good experience. That was kind of uplifting, and that was just the way those movies were. And this is one of them. And it did what it was supposed to do. It targeted the audience that it was supposed to target, which is 7 to 12, 13, 14 maybe on the outside. But I don't really have a connection with the movie in terms of nostalgia. I was a little too old for it when it came out. But had I been 10 when this came out, I'm sure I would have fucking loved it. Probably would have remembered every line from it. Probably would have saw it several times in the theater.
Yeah, and I mean, I was a little bit older. I was like 12 or 13 when this came out, and I still really, really dug it because, like I said, the kids in it were 12, 13, somewhere around that age. And so you really got a sense of these were kids that, their whole world was going to come crashing down. They all were going to have to move, and they weren't going to be able to be friends anymore. And they really liked their neighborhood, even though it was kind of like a working class sort of area. And so they had this one last thing. It's like, what if there really is this pirate treasure that's like found? And then they go on this big long adventure and they find it. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they find this fucking pirate ship and they actually like find the jewels and they save their house and everything like that. And, Sloth gets to go live with Chunk and his family. Yeah. and like the bad guys get punished and the ship goes off into the sunset. And, it's just like an awesome... like you said, it's a very optimistic story, and like every kid can watch that and be like, fuck yeah. It's like, what kid would not want to go like on a big fucking pirate adventure?
The only movie in recent history that I've seen in the theater that kind of has that Spielbergian tone that we're talking about would have been that Bumblebee movie. Remember that Transformers Bumblebee movie? It was capturing that same 80s optimism. I think it was supposed to be taking place in the 80s, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Stranger Things has that vibe to
it.
it.
Stranger Things probably. Yeah.
The series.
Yeah.
And the kid that played Mikey obviously was in Stranger Things too, like in a minor role like later.
Yeah, those were good times to grow up in. It was, you're coming out of the doldrums of the 70s and it's all this bright, shiny, high-tech new decade of the 80s. This shit was futuristic.
But I was gonna say too. I forgot there was a couple scenes very famously that were cut out of this. Right at the end, like where they find the big pirate ship and they're fighting the Fratellis and everything like that. There was originally a sequence where an octopus kind of attacked them, like in the water, and they even make reference to it, like when they get out, like they're even saying to the cops, Data says, and then there was the octopus, and everybody's like, what? There wasn't an octopus, but there was originally. You can see it on YouTube. It's on like the deleted scenes and stuff. They shot it, but it's like the octopus animatronic like didn't really look all that good. And so they just decided to scrap it. I think there was another deleted scene too where there was like a gorilla that escaped from a zoo or something like that. So they cut that out too. Because the movie is almost 2 hours long, like in its finished state. So it was supposed to be, I think the original script was more than 2 hours.
A lot of the pirate stuff looks so much like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride here at Disneyland and Disney World. It makes me wonder if they were trying to get a little bit of crossover action going. I don't know if Disney was in any way related with this, or if they're trying to piggyback something off.
I don't know. I mean, this is Amblin Entertainment, which is, like I said, it's Steven Spielberg's production company.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, but I do kind of feel like in the late 70s and early 80s, there was kind of like a little mini pirate...
Yeah.
Like resurgence, because you remember there was like Pirates of Penzance, and then they made that movie with Christy McNichol, the pirate movie that I saw on cable probably like 400 times, and then later on, like a couple years later, was Hook, and so I don't know. I kind of feel like there was like a pirate thing. It was almost kind of like, you know how sometimes there's like a dinosaur thing or like a disaster movie thing, or I kind of feel like there was a little mini pirate thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, they might have been homaging. The Pirates of the Caribbean ride, because it did have that kind of look to it. The pirate shit, honestly, when he climbs up through the thing in the pirate ship and finds One-Eyed Willie's, room, like with all the treasure on the table and all the dead, like all the skeletons, like the crew members, like I love that. I love that production design, like in that shit. I mean, the pirate ship looks so fucking good, but I don't know. It's just, I will say that obviously this is 85, so they're all practical effects. I will say that a couple of the optical shots didn't really hold up. Like the very last shot of like One-Eyed Willie's ship like going off into the sunset doesn't look that great. And also the one shot where he's lining up the rocks like in the doubloon, that doesn't look that great either. Like I said, it's kind of an optical or matte shot or whatever, and it doesn't really look that good. But everything else looks fantastic. But like I said, this is it's almost kind of like a live action cartoon a little bit. Don't think too much about continuity, because there's some stuff that all of these traps that this pirate and his crew supposedly made like underground, like obviously would not work in real life. You know what I mean? Or wouldn't work the way they're supposed to. But fuck it. It's like a video game, or it's just like a fun, don't think about it too much. Just, it's just like a fun family movie. Adults can watch it, kids can watch it, and it's kind of scary and kind of edgy and kind of funny. And, it's just a good time. It's just a good time for everybody. And I kind of feel like the 80s was kind of like the heyday of that type of family film.
The 80s decade was a time. 70s, late 70s, too. That was an era where Steven Spielberg is encapsulating the American middle-class experience. He's encapsulating that into a movie-like product. You can watch it, and you can get the vibe of what suburbia was like, or at least supposed to be like. And that's the point of reference of most of his stories. That even goes to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay? It's taking place in a new suburbia that's happening. Just a regular guy. He sees this damn mountain that's got a thing on the top. He even grabs the dirt from outside the house. He's throwing it in the windows. The kids go, "Can we help?"
That's just shit. That's like my favorite scene from that movie.
You're like, that's it.
That makes me laugh so much. I don't know why that makes me laugh more than anything else.
So Spielberg knew exactly how to sell a movie, psychologically, how to pull the psychological strings in the American viewer to pull them into these stories.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
And I mean, and I was gonna say too, like the funny thing about this one, I was thinking of like some of the best fucking lines. There's some of Chunk's greatest lines where he was talking about the fucking when he gets kidnapped by the fucking criminals, and like they ask him to like tell me everything, and he just starts telling them every bad thing he's ever done, like his whole entire life, like starting back in fucking 3rd grade, and the whole shit about like him, like them taking the ice cream away from him, and him trying to like call the cops. They actually made a Gremlins reference in this, where when he calls the cops to like report the Fratellis, the cops said they don't believe him because apparently he had called the cops a whole bunch of times and like, made false reports. And he said, "Oh, is this like the time that you called and said about all those creatures that multiply when you throw water on them?"
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like they were kind of like in universe, like referring back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
the Spielbergian trick was to start the audience off in very normal time space, which is suburbia. Very normal.
Yeah.
And from that, you take them into a fucking strange...
Yeah, like a big adventure. Yeah.
Adventure. That's, it's kind of like the hero's adventure.
Yeah.
Which he knew what he was doing. Probably because hanging out with Lucas and them talking to the dude that wrote The God of a Thousand Faces and everything with Campbell.
Yeah.
It's kind of Campbell influence is probably where a lot of that comes from. Also, an understanding of psychology and propaganda, which there's nothing wrong with that. All advertisement is a form of propaganda. You start off from a baseline, and we're trying to sell this to America, to the middle income. That's going to be the baseline. So that's where the story begins.
Well, yeah, because you're trying to get people. That's why the Goonies starts with, obviously it has kind of this prologue with the criminals escaping, so you can kind of have like a fast-paced kind of thing.
Right.
But then it goes into these kids establishing their life, their friendship.
Right.
They all come over to the one house, they're gathering, and everything is
normal. Everything is
normal
very
and
normal.
exposited, like in a really efficient fashion, and you get a sense of each character. Each character is interesting. They each have their own little flaws and their own little strengths, and you really get a good sense of that very quickly.
And the kids in the audience are going, "Oh, I like these kids. They're just like me. They're just like my friends. This is me. I'm in this movie." That's the jump. They live with me. This is my neighborhood. Yeah. And then that's where the story begins.
Yeah, because everybody, everybody that grew up in our era, maybe probably nowadays too, it's like everybody knew kids like that.
Yeah.
And they were all of the characters in this are distinctive.
Yeah, and you lived in a neighborhood kind of like that. Yeah. They're showing you the dead center, the middle. Yeah. You lived in a place like that, or a little bit better than that, or a little bit worse than that. But you could still relate to it. Yeah. That's what they're doing.
And it's very important to get everybody kind of
on the same page of music.
Depending on what you want to do. If you're doing like a movie like this that
it's a tentpole movie.
Yeah, that you want to be like this massive crowd pleasing family movie. Yep. Yeah, you have to establish
what the medium baseline is.
This is somebody that everybody can relate to. Right. These are likable characters. These are people that are like people that you know. And this is the situation that you're in. It's a recognizable situation, and then we're gonna take them on this improbable adventure. But it's gonna be like a wonderful adventure.
Yeah, he's aiming center mass of the target. That's what you'd call it in the American military. Aim center mass, and that's what Spielberg was real good with that.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. And like I said, even though Richard Donner is credited with directing this, a lot of the actors later said that Steven Spielberg was kind of a co-director. I mean, he produced it, and he was the one that came up with the story.
Donner was great too.
Well, Richard Donner was Steven Spielberg's mentor. Yeah. So you know what I mean?
Another genius.
Yeah, so, with all that talent, but, behind the camera and in front of it, because like I said, all the kids in this are great, and there's, their interactions are just so great and naturalistic that, it's really, really hard. It's really difficult to dislike this movie. I can't imagine. I don't know. I kind of feel like most people, if you don't like the Goonies, I kind of feel like maybe, what's the matter with you?
Like I said,
it's so fun.
I was too old for it when it came out. But
I get that.
But I appreciate what they did. Yeah. It's a great mechanism. It was a great film for doing what it was supposed to do, which is make a bunch of money and make a bunch of people happy. That's exactly what it did. Yeah.
It made me happy at the time, and it makes me happy every single time I watch it. Yeah. It's just a super fun movie. So that'll do it for our movie retrospective on the Goonies. Tell me what you thought about the Goonies. Did you see it back in the 80s? Have you watched it with your kids? What did they think about it? I'm really actually curious about that. Tell me about that in the comments, and we will see you guys on the next movie retrospective. Bye.